I'm Chris Fabra. I'm the Web Content Manager for CFE Media and Technology, and welcome to this installment of the Maintaining Your Plant Floor Edge series. Maintenance is a crucial aspect of manufacturing and helps workers remain safe and productive and keeps machinery operational and lasting longer than ever. Maintenance, though, is so much more than that. It's a philosophy and a discipline, and how it is applied differs from company to company and person to person. So how do you keep maintenance at a high level? What does your company practice to stay consistent in their quality? This series will examine how subject matter experts and their companies work to keep maintenance going at the highest possible level. Today's subject matter expert is Tiffany Barnes, a senior offering manager for software solutions at Honeywell. She'll be discussing how digital twins can help manufacturers improve their maintenance operations and make them more efficient. Welcome, Tiffany. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I guess we'll start with something pretty broad here. When it comes to maintenance for process manufacturing facilities, what are some of the trends you're seeing, and what are some of the opportunities and challenges that you're facing on a day-to-day basis?
Well, that's a good question. So what Honeywell's done with digital twins, I think we've played in this space for quite some time, whether that's like our process, twin, our process emulator, a control system digital twin, which is what I'm going to talk about today. What we've seen in industry for those that we serve is reactive maintenance. You talked about maintenance already, but reactive maintenance is a big deal because that tends to swing, as an example, our customers' operational expenditures, right? Reactive maintenance tends to be very timely, meaning it's typically needs to be triaged, right? So it's all hands on deck kind of moment. People from various areas, whether that's different domain expertise, have to come to triage whatever that reactive or incident, if you will, is. Coupled with what it means to be dealing with reactive maintenance is what we know our industry is struggling with, which is domain expertise, right? There is a skills gap that is growing. So what we did with respect to this digital twin, a control system digital twin, was to try to help our customers be even more proactive, reduce their risk in terms of reactive maintenance so that they can increase the metric that they're all talking about, which is uptime, right? They want to make sure that they have the utmost uptime so that they can meet their operational goals, right? So that's really what we were looking at when we came to the market with this offering.
Yeah, and just to kind of set the stage, with digital twins, what has Honeywell been doing with that in general, not just with maintenance, but as a whole?
Yeah, good question. I would say it probably started 15 to 20 years ago with what was then known as our operator training simulator and Unisim, right? Over the years, that has transformed in the industry, and that actually sits in a different business. So I won't talk about that here today. Additionally, with project execution, so talking about reducing risk and decoupling kind of what I'm alluding to as schedule constraints with the experts, like when they're available and what becomes critical path. We've been leveraging digital twins as a part of our project execution. We announced, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, 10 years ago, something we called LEAP, which is our lean execution on how we do our projects. That's a form of digital twin that Honeywell has been doing for probably about 10 years internally, right? To basically decouple the constraints around hardware and software, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we did was we took what we were doing in our projects and a broad number of what we call voice of the customer, right? We spent probably the last 2 years talking to our customers in terms of what are your pain points? What are you dealing with? What can we bring to the table that adds value to your existing work processes in addition to supporting their digital maturity, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things that come up in that conversation, including data integrity, data management, protecting our customers' IP, right? These are things that are kind of byproducts of the digital twin conversation, if you will. But Honeywell, as I've been mentioning, from just process emulators to also our projects, have been doing digital twins for many years. And I think what we've learned is digital twins kind of take on a persona based on who's using it, right? it could be the same set of data potentially used by, let's say, an operational person, and it becomes an operations digital twin. It can be used for maintenance and it becomes a maintenance digital twin, right? So the name kind of gets slapped onto the digital twins based on who's using it and how.
Right.
So part of what we did was the base, or the bread and butter, if you will, of what we did was build a digital twin off of our control system to satisfy, let's say, engineering, right? And that's what we're doing today with Digital Prime.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned, digital twins are essentially an emulator. It's a model, it's a simulation, it's designed to replicate, the real
Sure.
thing. And with digital twin technologies, how's Honeywell using them to help keep workers safe in their day-to-day operations? I know I've seen some
Yeah.
examples of this at some past Honeywell events, but in your experience, how are they being used to help keep workers safe?
Yeah, good question. So I'll separate again kind of what we talk about as a process emulator to my counterparts that are delivering forge process digital
Hmm.
twins, right? That is truly the emulation uh, portion, right? What's interesting about what we're doing in Digital Prime is we came to the table with a true clone. We're not emulating anything, right? We're actually taking what's live at production
Hmm.
and cloning that in this secure environment, right? We're not emulating from the respect of we're going to try to make it look as close to your live plant as you as we can get, right? With data
Hmm.
scientists and things of that nature, we actually cloned what's at production. When you talk about safety, right? When we look at engineering as an example, we have a lot of end users that don't have the capability to build development systems because development systems are riddled with their own complications. They actually require high capital expenditure, and then they need to be maintained. And as the site changes, that development system remains kind of untouched because they're busy in their operational needs to meet production goals, right?
Yeah.
What that means is very quickly that development system becomes almost unusable or only usable for a big project, right? So an
Hmm.
example of what we're doing with our control system twin in Digital Prime is our end users are seeing results such as a higher testing fidelity, right? When we can do that, that means there's less risk for those in the field, right? They can do things like also tackle digital maturity. So I'll kind of, there's a lot I can talk about here, but I'll just kind of pick a couple that come to mind fastest is as an example, when we think about the human machine interface, a graphic that an operator uses, that's like the wheels on the ground, like your car,
Hmm.
right? That's where the control happens despite the engineering. If an operator can't operate the plant, there's safety risks in the field, right?
Right.
As our customers progress and they need to test these HMIs as an example to make sure they're behaving, there is some stimulation needs that has to happen to test the correctness. Is it attached to the right valve in the field, right? It could be a typo, right? We talk about these sorts of things. We've had customers that because they can't have an increased testing fidelity, they load these things live and it's unwieldy, right? Because there are just mistakes in the engineering that they can't vet prior to going live, right?
Hmm.
That could shut down units. It can create safety risks, causes people like we were talking about triaging, right? That's when
Yeah.
lots of people with hands on deck, that's one of the highest risk factors.
Right.
We see abnormal situations happen in those transient operations, right?
Hmm.
That's when people are at most at risk.
Hmm.
So helping those get ahead of that and test at a higher fidelity here helps ensure that they reduce the risk of the go live situation.
Right. You've been talking about, triage and reactive maintenance and, how that
Right.
seems to be the norm. But how can digital twins and other digital technologies help, sort of shift from reactive to a more predictive and preventive maintenance, which is preferably the ideal, get ahead of these problems before they happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. We have some customers that are ahead of the game where they actually leverage digital twins in conjunction with live process data, right?
Hmm.
So, meaning from our aspect in terms of distributed control system, we have that clone in this prime environment, right? The second piece would be how do we get live process data or historical data, right? That's readily available. A lot in our industry are capturing historical data that could potentially feed into this space, so that they can leverage their digital twin as a part of operational excellence, right? Not just project planning, which is kind of the phase of where we are now with the value that we bring to the table. But the key there is leveraging data that's real and has
Mhm.
happened in a plant so that that can be used, to actually operate the plant, right? So there's the
Right.
planning phase where we're bringing value, but there's the operating phase, which we're not there yet, right?
Right.
Part of that is a whole separate conversation, but it's what I'm seeing as this IT OT convergence, right?
Hmm.
OT people want and need this solution, but there's a real IT component,
Hmm.
in terms of data, connectivity, security, all the things where that's happening kind of in real time for our customers. So even though the OT folks are ready, they're like, hey, give me this solution. It's going to help me in my job. There is an
Yeah.
IT component that says, hey, we need to reduce these other risk factors, security, IP,
Hmm.
right? Those sorts of things.
Right. That sounds like one of the common bottlenecks that engineers are facing when it comes to digital twins and maintenance, and trying to improve their safety. That IT OT convergence, which has been a major
Yeah,
topic, even going back before COVID.
right.
We were hearing a lot about that. Are there other common challenges or issues engineers are facing with trying to implement digital twins uh, as they go along?
Yeah, I think another big one is what I kind of call the status quo, right? Some of the
Hmm.
industries we serve, whether that's petrochemical, refining, chemicals, tend to be industries that have been around a long time. They're very used to doing things as they've done it. It's the if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality, right?
Hmm.
But nobody's doing a good job of defining broken. They're just dealing with things as they always have. And I think that as we see this skills gap, people don't have the time to sit and learn 30 years of experience anymore,
Yeah.
right? So they're going to look at technology. We talk about that, you mentioned, I'll fall back on how do digital twins increase safety, not just from operations, but digital maturity also can include things like building automation into their operations, whether
Hmm.
that's a startup of some heavy equipment or dangerous equipment or a converter or something of that nature, that was typically very manual, done by a 30-year vet operator, right? We
Hmm.
can do things now with our technology that basically builds that automation into the control system so it becomes standard work, right? It's a bit of that Toyota model that if we can be standard and consistent, your novice operator can now perform like your senior operator every
Hmm.
time. Well, in order to
Right.
progress in that digital maturity, they need a safe space to do that engineering. They can't just do that live on production,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I've seen, at past Honeywell events, some of that modeling, trying to, get the engineer that safe space where they can learn and train in a virtualized environment. It's
Right.
almost like it's almost like playing a video game, but it allows them to make those mistakes, without causing, millions of dollars worth of downtime because they hit the wrong valve or press the wrong button.
Right, right. And in the engineering world, simple things like copy paste errors, right? You could be
Hmm.
doing building of what we call like bulk building. Hey, I need to replicate 10 of these tags. Or like you're saying, we've done things where you're in a simulated, potentially a simulated environment or on production where they're trying to manipulate a valve, but in order to not take the live valve, they maybe change the tag by one character, right? And I know this is kind of nitty gritty, but these are the kind of mistakes that happen live in the field that cause that reactive maintenance, you know?
Right. Yeah, and with the process industries in particular, they are, as you say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They're very conservative and very
Right.
averse to change, and part of that is because if there is a mistake, if there is an issue, it's more than just 15 minutes of trying to fix a problem. It can have severe and long-lasting repercussions for weeks or months to come.
Yeah, and if they don't have the domain experts, it's worse, right? So it's what I found in my role in incubating kind of software technologies is it really comes down for our customers to the devil they know, right? They know
Hmm.
something's not working, but they know the problems, they know how to work around it. And there is this adoptability barrier that comes with new software and new processes that
Hmm.
sometimes it's also seen as I don't have time to train somebody on something new, right? So with our digital twin, one of the things we did was it it can be kind of underwhelming when I show you a clone of what we did because it's exactly like your production system.
Hmm.
That was by design. So there's no training, there's no mistake. You log in and it's very familiar, right? It's not like you're saying an emulation or somebody goes and trains to be a pilot and they're training in some other cockpit that's not a real plane, right? We don't have
Right.
that situation. It is the cloned environment. It behaves exactly the same as the production.
So within that spirit, it sounds like, trying to find a simple, but the simplicity seems like the best way to go about this, but it's easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in coming with what we're describing as what seems like a very simple solution, I think the barrier that we also had to overcome was that IT side. We had to take that elephant, take it out and address it, set it in the middle of the room and talk about it, right?
Hmm.
Because we had to talk about, we did extensive voice of the customer with the IT counterparts that said, hey, what does security mean to you? Data
Hmm.
security. Because we're taking IP that typically resides on-prem, right?
Hmm.
Something that exists on hardware, something tangible that people can control and own, right? And so there's perception of control. I think that happens also in what we did with this digital twin, because I think that data becomes powerful. You talk about predictive and more that we can do with the data once it's
Hmm.
available in a single space, right? Talking about what ChatGPT does or Copilot, um, on generic data. Imagine if our
Hmm.
customers could do that on curated data that's
Hmm.
theirs, right?
Yeah.
But the first step is kind of breaking that IT barrier, saying, we want to meet you where you are.
Yeah.
Honeywell's not just saying, here's what we did for security. We're saying, what do you guys need on paper that says we've checked the box for you guys to feel comfortable here, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's a real leap of faith because IT and OT, they want to be safe, but how they do it and what they view as safe are two completely different things.
Absolutely. And we definitely saw this kind of with our early pilots. We had to do what our end users are calling vendor risk assessment. So that was
Hmm.
a term used by the IT counterparts, basically, show me your architecture, right? And sometimes that involves things like NDAs because we can't risk our infrastructure to just expose it to somebody to prove that we're safe, right? So it's
Hmm.
kind of gets very complex there, right? In terms of how we prove how things are safe and the safety measures that we put in place to safeguard our customers' data.
Right. Is, ha- has there been a really good success story, particularly when it comes to maintenance, where you got the two sides to come together and, you know, achieved a positive result you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll refrain from customer names and sharing that,
Sure.
if you will, but we had some really good examples in terms of timely for maintenance. We'll use the example of like a shutdown or a turnaround time, right? Taking engineering off the critical path. What typically has happened for this customer is that shutdown times have to be longer, right?
Hmm.
To accomplish real maintenance activities, which are things that happen in the field, right? The control system tends to be a stepchild, things that, oh, I just need that to get back up and running, right? But there are maintenance activities, not just in the field, but maintenance activities that happen on the software. So by offering this up, our end user did not have to go through the procurement process of A, ordering hardware, B, engineering hardware, spending
Hmm.
all the money, to only scale to a percentage of what they had, right? Being where we're hosted, we could be extremely agile. We can scale 100% to what they have at site. We were able to get them their digital twin ahead of this shutdown time. They completed
Hmm.
engineering activities in this space, which allowed them to meet their turnaround schedule, right? They were able to be in their turnaround schedule for their allotted time, which they said would have required, if they didn't have this, a multi-week extension in shutdown time, which was a big
Wow.
deal. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's great, and now they can do things that they probably didn't realize they could as a result. Now, like, what do we do now?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up because something that happens, we talk about the, industry and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And their conservativeness. I think what happens when we talk about software and digital twins quite often is that our end users end up bringing kind of those hardware behaviors into the
Mhm.
software space, right?
Yeah.
As an example, they may have, if a customer was lucky enough to have the capital expenditure to build a development system, the true up, meaning when that development system matched production, was its best when they first built it.
Right.
And then over time it deviates. And then what happens is they use it less. So when we talk about digital twin commercialization, the thought process was like, I just want it for a month for that project. And it's like, well, that's not where the value is. You only
Right.
want it that way because that's what your hardware constraints were. But
Hmm.
if we have a twin that's up to date and available all the time, the use case just expands. Your engineers
Hmm.
can live in this space, right?
Sure.
They can digitize, they can be a lot more advanced and progress on that journey a lot faster, right?
Yeah. So I guess to wrap up, regardless of whether they use digital twin technology or not, what's the best advice you can give for someone trying to improve their maintenance operations on a micro and a macro level?
Yeah, I mean that's a big question. I think our customers have to take a good look at the technology that's out there. I think they have to push boundaries in terms of that status quo we were talking about.
Hmm.
Really do an analysis of the value that a digital twin can bring to their environment, right? There's different manufacturing processes that are out there with different third party components that need to be filled. I think the biggest thing is adopting as holistically as they can a digital twin that provides their users a space to do work, especially because we're seeing an influx of new skills come in as old skills leave the building, right?
Hmm.
They need a low risk space so that work can be done. The second step would be to leverage that digital twin to start building that automation, what some portions of our industry know as state-based control, as an example, right? To build your best practices into your control system. That doesn't mean that you're reducing skill sets on site. You're just bringing that skill set to operate at its best all the time, right? And part of that is, at the bigger picture is involve your end users early so you have buy-in early.
Right.
When I see that top down approach, it's not successful because the
Yeah.
people that are being pushed to use new tools are not receptive unless you have buy-in from them immediately. Involve them
Hmm.
early, whether that is, like you said, is it a field technician? Is it an operator? Depending on the persona your digital twin's going to take on, involve those users early, right? Let
Hmm.
them have the buy-in and that aha moment, and then the value will really come from that.
No, that totally makes sense. I absolutely agree with that. Well, thank you, Tiffany, for joining me today. Some great insights on maintenance and
Yep,
digital twins. So thank you very much for your time today.
absolutely. And thank you for having me.
Yeah. And if you enjoyed today's video, we have other videos on the Maintaining Your Plant Floor Edge series. You can find them on our YouTube channel, PlanEng, and you can also find these on our website, www.planengineering.com, along with other video interviews from trade shows and with thought leaders and subject matter experts, as well as other video interviews on other topics for plant engineering. And I'm Chris Favre, Web Content Manager, CFE Media and Technology. Thank you for watching this installment of Maintaining Your Plant Floor Edge.